Section 0 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme, a repast for the recluse, a refreshment for the railway reader. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Krista Zaleski. Random Readings in Racy Rhyme, a repast for the recluse, a refreshment for the railway reader, by Charles Harwood Greene. Preface. As brevity is said to be not only the soul of wit, but the art of letter writing too, the same principle may be applied to book writing also. Admitting this, the paucity of the following pages may prove no real hindrance to the favourable reception of the book. The author, however, rests not his claims to public patronage on so flimsy a basis, but ventures to hope that the sprinklings of humour and satire found here and there may not merely interest the reader and fully compensate him for its many rhythmical irregularities and imperfections, but make amends also for its numerous deficiencies. And, as the random readings are not published on account of any supposed poetical merit, but simply as racy rhymes, of sufficient interest and convenient length for recitation, and adapted to the sensational tastes of a laughter-loving community, this eccentric little volume is now placed in the hands of the reader, whose unbiased award is calmly and confidently awaited by the author. Dedication. To the lovers of the ludicrous, the advocates of fun, to everyone who loves a joke or relishes a pun, to all who scan its title page and con the readings o'er, the author dedicates his book, both now and evermore. End of section 0. Section 1 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. The Railway Solitaire. John Bull is quite hysterical about this sad affair, which fills with fear and wild dismay each railway solitaire. Not only those of withered frame are fraught with nervous fears, athletic men are timid grown as those of tender years. Folks used to travel up and down and not to feel afraid, till Muller's monster tragedy such great commotion made. But now to every human mind 'tis palpable and plain, that though insured, life's not secure upon a railway train. I always was a nervous man, and, speaking candidly, have often paid a heavy fine for my timidity. In public places of resort am very seldom seen. So though I'm growing very grey, continue rather green. For want of courage when a lad, I always was the tool of every artful playmate, and the butt of all the school. I never durst a saddle cross, nor e'er attempt to ride, unless by way of caution first, my legs were firmly tied, nor even dared to climb a tree, nor clamber o'er a gate, lest I should fall unluckily, and crack my shallow pate. And when I grew to man's estate, oh, was it not unkind? The maidens all deserted me for men of stronger mind. And now in single blessedness I mourn my bitter fate, in never having ventured on the matrimonial state. One morn in August 64, I felt inclined to roam, and far away I quickly left my lodgings and my home. I spent the day with gladsome friends, apart from every care, not dreaming of the sorrow that hung o'er the solitaire. 'Twas late when I the station reached, the clock was striking 8. "Jump in, be quick," the porter cried, "or you will be too late." He pushed me in, then locked the door, to move the train began, when lo, beside me, still as death, there sat another man. 'Twas on the self-same railway line, and not far from the spot, where Briggs, poor fellow, came to grief, and such may be my lot. Then in my sole companion's face I took a hasty peep, and saw to my discomfiture he feigned to be asleep. I trembled like an aspen leaf, my limbs began to quake, for though appearing fast asleep, he wore a wide awake. The very model of a class well known as London prigs, or worse than this, may chance to be the murderer of Briggs. Fire! Murder! Porter, stop the train! I dare not, will not ride. Alone with this suspicious man that's dozing by my side? Who knows but he may soon awake, then his revolver draw, and by a dark but daring deed let daylight in my maw. I cannot breathe, I dare not move, 'twould madness be to read, lest in another moment I may get a broken head. Then mulled and mangled, mauled and munched, till recollection fails, my lifeless body may be pitched right headlong on the rails. No porter came to stop the train, the sweat stood on my brow, when my companion shouts, "Hola, my covey, what's the row?" You'd best be minding what you say, and mind what I say too, for if you are afraid of me, I'm not afraid of you. Such conduct even by a saint is not to be endured, so for the sake of needy friends I hope you are insured. For ere another station's reached, on this you may depend, your life that's near its terminus will reach its precious end. I sank upon my bended knees and shrieked, whoe'er you be, "O stranger, don't for pity's sake be mullerizing me. My money take, my watch, my all, but spare, oh spare my life, that I may see but once again my children and my wife." Says he, "You lying hypocrite, how dare you trifle thus, and with an old machine like yours to make so great a fuss? For 'tis a fact well known to me you have no wife at all, but are a stale old bachelor, whose Christian name is Paul. No child nor chick to mourn your loss, nor relative to pine, when I smash your locomotive and then fling it on the line. Here goes," said he, then suddenly he seized me by the throat, and muttered words I could not hear, and therefore cannot quote. For once I struggled manfully, but oh, 'twas all in vain. A straw may just as well have tried to stop a luggage train. I soon became unconscious, for he knelt upon my chest, and hard upon my windpipe he his bony knuckles pressed. But suddenly he changed his mind, relaxed his hold, and said, "How stupid not to know me, Paul! Why, I'm your brother, Ned. Though 21 years ago, it must be that or more, since lured by California gold, I left my native shore. Though quite a stripling when I sailed of less than 20 years, I knew you by your nervousness, your needless, groundless fears. Thinks I, 'tis brother Paul, by Jove, it can be none but he, for whose especial benefit I've crossed the stormy sea. So, being somewhat mischievous, and much by impulse led, resolved not quite to strangle you, but frighten you instead." Encouraged thus, I quickly rose and stood upon my feet. The brake was now put on, for we were nearing Fenchurch Street. I clasped him in my loving arms, embraced him as my friend, and thus my fright, and not my life, had reached its precious end. We shortly reached the terminus. I landed with a bound, rejoicing greatly in the fact that I was safe and sound. I lifted up instinctively my heart in honest praise to him who so mysteriously had thus prolonged my days. Then turned to see if brother Ned my pious feelings shared, when lo, to my astonishment, my friend had disappeared. I paced the platform up and down for half an hour at least, and every time I took a turn, my misery increased. At length I grew impatient, for I felt it was unkind in brother Ned to steal away and leave me thus behind. I hailed a cab reluctantly to drive to my abode, and bid the cabman drive with speed to 19 Curtain Road. But when I came to pay the fare, I felt indeed bereft. My purse was gone, my money flown, and not a tanner left. My toothpick and my spectacles, on which I set such store, so necessary for a man of 50 years or more, and even my tobacco box and silver-mounted pipe, companion of my solitude, had not escaped his gripe. But worst of all, and that which made my heart with anguish burn, my watch that ne'er would go before, went never to return. I named this to the cabman, who of course began to swear that it was a shabby subterfuge to cheat him of his fare. I bid him use civility, and not to waste his breath on a penniless unfortunate but just escaped from death. This rendered cabby furious, vociferous, and loud, which soon attracted to the spot a sympathizing crowd. "Go in," said someone strangely like my quondam brother Ned. "'Twill satisfaction be to know you've punched his precious head." "Stop, stop," said I, "and I will try the paltry fare to borrow. And should I fail, be kind enough to call again to-morrow." I knocked and rung both loud and long, but no one came, not they. For master, mistress, and the maid were all gone to the play. "Now, sir, be quick, I cannot wait," the saucy cabman said. "As you seem so short of money, give me something else instead." I offered him my 4 and 9, but no, that would not do. To a man in his position, 'twas not worth a jolly screw. I mentioned then my velvet vest, at which he seemed amused. And for my generosity I got myself abused. Says he, "I am a cabman, sir, and everybody knows that a cabman's not a ragman, nor a dealer in old clothes. But as my corduroys are now a bit the worse for wear, I'll take your inexpressibles in payment of the fare. Now, lads, come lend a ready hand and help me to discharge a duty which I owe myself and all the trade at large." Then cabmen 3 surrounded me and placed me in a fix, when they took away my peg-tops for a paltry 1 and 6. "Police! Police! Police!" I cried. The crowd took up the cry, which was frequently repeated by the people passing by. "Police! Police! Police!" I cried, till absolutely hoarse, when it happened opportunely that a couple of the force for once arrived in time to stay the egress of the rogues, and then commenced a struggle called the Battle for the Brogues. The cabmen fought with fury and determination too, and to the nameless garment stuck tenaciously as glue, and used their bunch of 5s with such dexterity and skill that the Battle for the Brogues became a scientific mill. But the truncheons fell so heavily upon the cabmen's skulls that they pitched and tossed like vessels that were damaged in their hulls, when the constables succeeded, in defiance of their fists, in slipping on the handcuffs and in pinioning their wrists. They marched them off to durance in a sanguinary plight, to chew the cud of penitence, the remnant of the night. My peg-tops were returned to me, their rightful owner still, and after all not much the worse for passing through the mill. I doned them too most gratefully without the least delay, and just in time to see my friends returning from the play. Next morning I was summoned by the officer in power to wend my way to Worship Street at quite an early hour. The prisoners, whose faces were adorned with dust and gore, disliked that place of worship, for they'd all been there before. I proved most undeniably that I was not to blame, but had suffered an indignity as well as open shame, had lost my purse, my watch, my all, and nearly lost my life, and closed my day's misfortunes in a scene of fearful strife. In making out my case, you know, I had the truth to tell, and a personal description of the thief to give as well, who'd a mole upon his forehead and a scar upon his face, which art could never remedy, and time could ne'er erase. His worship said you've well described the how, the where, and when. Do you think you could identify on seeing him again? Undoubtedly I could, sir, and I'm confident of this, that under any circumstances I should know his face. The garroter, you inform me, had a scar upon his face, and a mole upon his forehead too, a rather awkward place. Now, sir, examine carefully the prisoners at the bar, for on the cheek of one of them I see an ugly scar, and a mole upon his forehead which he tries to hide in vain. He is possibly the miscreant that robbed you in the train. I walked up to the culprit who was standing nearest me, and soon had reason to exclaim, "This one it cannot be." I passed on to the second, and examined well his brow, and cried, "This is the cabman, sir, that kicked up all the row." But soon as I approached the third, the rascal turned aside, and hung his head upon his chest, the fatal marks to hide. "Hold up your head," the magistrate indignantly exclaimed. "There must be something on your face of which you are ashamed." Then forward stepped a constable, and slightly raised his head, and there he was, as large as life, my quasi-brother Ned. I own it seems a little strange that I should be so long in pointing out the rascal who had done me so much wrong. But my spectacles were missing, and so very short my sight, that I could not see the distance to be certain I was right. The officers were ordered next to search his pockets round, when every missing article was on his person found, and shortly was returned to me, except my watch and chain, which, as I stated once before, went not to come again. 'Twas no little consolation that my watch, now growing old, and extremely paralytic, had been changed for current gold, which now became my property to pocket or to spend, and furnished to the needful to accommodate a friend. The villain who had shown such animosity to me was speedily committed for this daring robbery, and as he was a pugilist of such consummate skill, was provided with a 14 years' employment at the mill. The others were convicted of assaulting the police, and their liberty recovered for a £5 note apiece. And should they ere to Curtain Road convey another fare, will remember this adventure with the Railway Solitaire. End of section 1. Section 2 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. The Lottery Mania. In the marvellous year 1824, it may possibly be a year or two more, nor much will it matter if one or two less, my notes being lost I must leave you to guess. And though for the truth I was always a stickler, the truth is in dates I was never particular. For my careful old mother, as I have heard say, figs, raisins, and dates kept out of my way, lest I should require the STICK. But now for the facts. In 1824, or sometime about as I stated before, a mania ran wild all through the potteries for trying their luck in the government lotteries. The government agents throughout the whole land bamboozled their victims on every hand, while placards of every colour and grade adorned the shop windows of every trade, to turn all the heads and bewilder the brain of all the inhabitants greedy of gain, who may be ambitious their fortunes to mend, and lived in Lane Delph or the town of Lane End. Thus hundreds of those the most deeply in debt fell into the coils of this plausible net, expecting each one by a rapid transition to place his affairs in a thriving condition. Now there were 3 brothers, so needy and poor as scarcely to keep the grim wolf from the door, who by rising up early and sitting up late, and by unceasing labour contended with fate. The first was a cobbler with care on his brow, the second a peasant that followed the plough, the third was a tailor much younger in years, a little unscrupulous knight of the shears. But lest my 3 heroes from memory slip, their names they were Crispin and Roger and Snip. Now Crispin, whose name oft appeared on the rolls of the Court of Requests, was a mender of souls, and all the long day he was driving his tax, and like a true cobbler stuck close to his wax. Nor for his hard fortune did he care a feather, convinced in his soul there was nothing like leather. And poor honest Roger, on industry bent, with wife and a family blessed with content, his work ne'er neglecting as many men do, just managed to live by the sweat of his brew. But Snip, what of him? Why, the truth I must tell, was mightily given to cutting the swell, and had throughout life the unfortunate knack of starving his belly to cover his back. And like most of his craft, though I mean no offence, his cabbage he cut at his neighbour's expense, and by plying his needle and driving his stitches, did eke out a living by making of breeches. But the lottery came with its pounds for its pence, and its fabulous prizes in uncertain sense, and one of its agents, a cunning old rip, in an unlucky moment had pounced upon Snip, who with his 2 brothers, both Crispin and Roger, an easy prey fell to this artful old dodger, and lured by the wiles of this oily old chap, fell heels over head in the flycatcher's trap. He told of a neighbour whose head had grown white, from toiling by day and from working by night, and yet he was poor and of rent in arrears, and he, like his friend, was a knight of the shears. He told of a labourer, honest and meek, who earned only 7 and 6 a week, and after he'd wasted his strength for the nation, would still, but for him, have died of starvation. He told of a cobbler who night and day toiled, yet in earning fair living had ever been foiled, whose physical vigour was failing him fast, and who still, but for him, would have stuck to the last. Yet each only once chanced to cast in his lot, and each, strange to say, a large fortune had got. They stared at each other as men often do, on hearing of wonders attractive and new, and in utter amazement distended their eyes, until bright gilded castles appeared in the skies, while visions of silver and nuggets of gold in ponderous masses before their eyes rolled. So now the old fox had no longer to wait, for they gulped up the treacle and swallowed the bait, exclaiming, "By Jove, that the man was a ninny, who longer delayed to contribute his guinea." "A guinea," cried Crispin. "A guinea," said Snip. "A guinea," quoth Roger, "the chance must not slip." And Crispin exclaimed, "Though my feet should go bare, I'll sell all my leather and buy up a share. And if after that I'm still short of tin, why, I'm willing, quite willing, to sell my own skin." "And I," said poor Roger, "so bad is my trade, I'll part with my shovel, my hoe, and my spade, and purchase a share, should I eat my meat raw, and sell all my bedding and lie upon straw." "As to me," shouted Snip, "though in rags I appears, I pawn all my cabbage and part with my shears, for I'll have a share, be the cost what it will, and my pockets ere long shall assuredly fill. Let the finger of scorn point at me if it can, repeating, 'There goes the 9th part of a man.' And though I be scarcely 5 feet and an inch, I'll dare them to call me a jack at a pinch. For soon I shall join with an heiress in marriage, possess my own mansion, and ride in a carriage. The prize is before us, 'twould be quite a sin to show the white feather. Let's go in and win." The money was raised by hook or by crook, and their names all enrolled in the lottery book. The cash handed over, and as a reward, each sapient noodle received a card. And though upon this they could never get fat, they may thank all their stars they got even that. But now for the climax. Each heart leapt with joy on hearing the drawing was fixed for July. Snip, Crispin, and Roger quite fidgety got to handle the money to fall to their lot. And while much anxiety o'er them was creeping, preventing all 3 of our heroes from sleeping, some mischievous fellow, by way of a freak, resolved at all hazards to play them a trick. 3 letters were written and sent in a trice, enclosing a cheque for 10,000 apiece, to be paid in hard cash on the 1st of September, a day which our heroes had cause to remember. Now by some means or other this wag had contrived to drop in at the time the said letters arrived, was first to congratulate each on his luck, and loud in his praises of all for their pluck. Crispin shouted and vowed that his fortune was made, and from that very moment he'd give up his trade, and danced, kicked, and jumped like a frisky young foal, till his shoes, his old shoes, parted body from soul. Now Roger, who happened no scholar to be, most puzzled to make out its meaning was he. For Roger in learning was always so lazy, he never could master his reading made aisy. And while vainly attempting the ciphers to count, his wife read it over and twigged the amount, exclaiming, "Why, Roger, you lumbering lout, what air are you fumbling so long about? Don't you know what a cheque is, you ninny? Why, zounds! 'Tis a lottery order for 10,000 pounds. On the 1st of September the same to be paid, and then, honest Roger, our fortunes are made. For 10,000 pounds, why, your fortunate wife silks and satins will wear all the rest of her life." Then Roger, emboldened by all he did learn, and now that his fortune had taken a turn, declared as a circle he spun on one leg, that a man he would make of his sweet daughter Peg. Then in ecstasy treated his wife with a smack, who went off in hysterics and fell on her back. But what about Snip? Why, his joy knew no bounds, and thought of naught else but his 10,000 pounds. And how the good pottery people would stare when he rolled through the streets in his carriage and pair, and saw in perspective each man touch his hat, in respect to the newly made aristocrat. But I must now be brief, so these men of renown, on the last day of August all started for town, determined in person, with joy quite elate, the lottery office to visit in state. On arriving in triumph each threw down a bag, He'd provided in which to deposit the swag, presented his cheque to the manager stern, which he threw in the fire and did instantly burn, and coolly informed all the petrified brothers that all the large prizes had fallen to others, and though he was by no means enamoured of pelf, that the largest of all he had netted himself. But there's nothing, said he, with a curl of his lip, that has fallen to Crispin or Roger or Snip. Thus burst in a moment this treacherous bubble, involving our friends in an ocean of trouble. A trouble so deep, I am bound to confess, I cannot find adequate words to express. 'Twas a sight to behold, how each countenance fell, when he found that his cheque was a regular sell. His visage became exceedingly lank, on finding his prize a detestable blank. Snip fainted away and went off in a swoon, and the clerks had to gather him up with a spoon, while Crispin and Roger so fearfully swore that the manager instantly showed them the door. And as they continued to kick up a rout, the clerks took and bundled the whole of them out, and said with a sneer and an insolent scoff, "The best thing you can do is to take yourselves off, and as lunatics should not be roaming at large, take care, or you'll surely be given in charge." A policeman that moment appeared in the street, who caused our three heroes to beat a retreat, and with feelings of martyrs when laid on the rack, they re-shouldered their wallets and begged their way back. End of section 2. Section 3 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. The Town Crier's Wedding. Notice is hereby respectfully given that the jolly town crier is going his round, and if you will only attentively listen, you will find that in him wit and humour abound. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I'm a man of importance, as all of you know, and the servant alike of both friend and of foe, a source of attraction to those that I meet, and greatly in favour with all in the street. A man of few words, but whatever I say, I utter in earnest and in my own way. So I make a great noise when I follow my calling, but what matter, so long as I'm paid for my bawling? The lawyer, fine fellow, his fee ne'er refuses, but feathers his nest if he wins or he loses, and should you employ him to make your last will, takes care of all things his own pockets to fill. So, killing or curing the gout or the tisick, the doctor expects to be paid for his physic, and to net as his profit for curing or killing 11 halfpenny out of a shilling. At least the world says so, then what if I follow, and beat these professional gentlemen hollow? For the bellman's rewarded, though strange it appear, for crying all day without shedding a tear. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. A bit of a newsman most surely am I, and if you will listen, I'll soon tell you why. For in going my rounds I take with me a charm, in my mystical tink-a-tink under my arm, and whenever it rings people know very well something new will be told by the man of the bell. 'Tis vastly amusing how people do stare when I trudge down the market or stroll through the fair. No matter how busy the market folks be, they can all spare a minute to listen to me. The crowds in the street rushing madly along stand silent and still when they hear my ding-dong, and the whole population seem bound in a spell by the magical notes of my musical bell. The fat-sided butcher deserts his meat stall, the shoemaker instantly throws down his awl, the weaver his shuttle as suddenly leaves, the slater as rapidly steps from the eaves, the miser as hastily locks up his hoard, the tailor in ecstasy springs from his board, the maid of all work leaves her broom and her mop, the boy on the causeway, the whipping his top. The carter in haste brings his team to a stand, and stares open-mouthed, with his whip in his hand. And while crowds in the distance are running pell-mell at the very first stroke of my wonderful bell, all classes are suddenly seized with desire to welcome the voice of the jolly town crier. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I'm much in request just before quarter day, when tenants in trouble get out of the way, and dispose of their goods with the honest intent of defrauding the landlord out of his rent. When true to my calling I publish the tale that all the said chattels are ready for sale. It matters but little when sure of my fee, Should the landlord look grim and ferocious at me? Should his tenant get off like a knave with his booty? There's no one can say I've exceeded my duty. I cannot please all, so indeed do not try. But to please my employers whenever I cry. And on such occasions when I please them well, there's no one more pleased than the man of the bell. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I'm a plain-spoken man, and not one of reserve, for I tell all I know, and from this never swerve. So modest young maidens intending to marry, keep me in the dark, lest their secret miscarry. Young women, no matter how crafty and wily, gain little advantage by acting so slyly. For when the young beau's fairly caught in the knot, and Cupid has tightened the same on the spot, the couple discard all mysterious spells, and make the fact known by the ringing of bells, which, though silent as death ere the work had begun, spring into full life when the mischief is done. If the secret ooze out by the bells of the spire, why not by the bell of the jolly town crier? Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. I've been married myself, and around me I see young people who would be inquiring of me how I myself acted when filled with ambition to get myself spliced and improve my condition. Bear patiently with me, dear friends, while I try the details to give you by way of reply. I was quite a young man, 21 or so, and was always considered a bit of a beau. Was fond of the fair, of their smiles and their dimples. So of course I was speedily cut for the simples. In other words, married, for better or worse. To some a great blessing, to others a curse. For of all the misfortunes that ever befell in his mortal career the poor man of the bell, none gave me the pain since the hour I was born as the scenes that occurred on my own wedding morn. For after a night spent in tossing and tumbling, and turning and twisting, and growling and grumbling, just before break of day I unconsciously fell, fast asleep but to dream of my fair Isabel. And at 9 in the morn by my friends I was found, most lustily snoring in slumber profound. "Come, Bill," said my mother, and shook me just so. "Look alive, for that Larkins is waiting below. And I know by his chuckle, which can't be mistaken, some mischief is brewing. Come, William, awaken, for surely 'tis time you were up and away. Don't you know 'tis the morning of your wedding day? Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes." So I sprang from my bed and first slipped on my hose, and then struggled hard to put on my new clothes. But my trousers I found so exceedingly small, it is marvellous how I got in them at all. And when they were on, you may laugh if you please, but the bottoms were almost up to my knees. And my lily-white vest, I should say at the least, was nearly 6 inches too short in the waist, while my coat, that was made of material new, a broad superfine, and whose colour was blue, was just of the cut an old Irishman wears, with collar so high as to cover his ears, but too narrow by half, while its tapering tails were so long as to reach nearly down to my heels. No word can describe, nor can language express, how indignant I felt at the sight of my dress, and exclaimed on beholding myself in the glass, "Here's humanity decked in the garb of an ass," and ne'er felt so much inclination to bray as I did on the morning of my wedding day. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. But I knew very well it was folly to fret, to get into a stew or go off in a pet, and to blow up my tailor was all of no use, even though I should cover his name with abuse. Nor yet could it profit to storm or to scold, although it was plain I'd been shamefully sold by my rascally tailor, who under the rose had bargained with Larkins to spoil all my clothes, and for no other reason with him did combine, but that Larkins, forsooth, was a rival of mine. So I slipped on my necktie, my boots, and my beaver, and descended the stairs in a regular fever, made straight for the door to escape in a crack, when that mischievous Larkins in haste pulled me back, as he rudely took hold of my coat by the tail, saying, "Kind sir, excuse me, this day I've a sale, which indeed I must get you this morning to cry, or otherwise there may be no one to buy." I pleaded my wedding by way of excuse, when Larkins responded, "'Tis all of no use. Here's your fee. Once accepted, you dare not say nay, with a paper containing all you have to say. And doubtless your townsmen will greatly admire the novel costume of the jolly town crier. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes." Then I thought of the church with a wish I was there, for I knew that I had not a moment to spare. So I rushed to the street out of sheer desperation, quite determined to brave every cross and vexation. This proved but a leap from the mud to the mire, or out of the frying pan into the fire. For soon a disturbance that no man could quell distracted the mind of the man of the bell. Had I been a gorilla escaped from his cage, or a monster of antediluvian age, an overgrown monkey or grinning baboon, or messenger newly arrived from the moon, I couldn't have caused half so much consternation as happened upon this eventful occasion. For ever at intervals one or another kept asking me after the health of my mother, while most of the boys that I met in the street made sundry inquiries about my poor feet. I boxed for his impudence one little fellow, converting his tune to a howl and a bellow. This kindled the ire of a fiery young fisherman who challenged to fight with me or any other man. Of course I declined his polite invitation, which caused in the thoroughfare quite a sensation. So seeing that I was disposed to be quiet, they got up a scene of disturbance and riot. Men, women, and children with each other vied to torture the bellman and bring down his pride. Some pelted my person with eggs that were stale, while others kept twitching my coat by the tail. And worst of all, one of those saucy young rogues took a spadeful of mud and bespattered my brogues. But the depth of my misery no man can tell, when another young urchin ran off with my bell, while at a short distance, as sure as a gun, were the tailor and Larkins enjoying the fun. But the gist of the tumult I did not discover till this harrowing scene of confusion was over, when I found that I had most unconsciously been, in some measure, the cause of this ludicrous scene. For in crying the sale of utensils and bedding, I had made a strange blunder and cried my own wedding. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. It was late in the day when I got to the church, and was nearly, in consequence, left in the lurch. Isabel swooned away when she saw my attire, so torn in the seams and bespattered with mire. And again she went off in her swoons, when her eyes chanced to fall on my sweet pantaloons. But at length she revived, looked around her, and said, "I'm so sorry I ever consented to wed." The priest now proceeded to open his book, and put on a most sanctimonious look, and the service to near its conclusion did bring, when he suddenly stopped, and demanded the ring. "The ring, sir," said I, in great trepidation. "The ring, sir," said he, with much irritation. "The ring, sir, I purchased last evening at Locket's, and placed it for safety in one of my pockets. But from that time to this, have thought no more about it." "The ring, sir," he thundered, "we can't do without it." I searched all my pockets both under and over, but still this love token I could not discover, which caused me to plunge like a pig in a fit, while my friends all with laughter were ready to split. The priest, quite indignant, his book closed at once. Then he called me a booby, a dolt, and a dunce, retired to the vestry and slammed to the door, and scampered off home, and we saw him no more. But while some lamented the sad termination of the town crier's wedding so full of vexation, its whereabouts shortly came into my nob, and the ring I brought up from the depths of my fob. I placed the said ring on her finger so fair, and then in the presence of all that were there, to cherish the darling did solemnly swear. And now that our plans with the priest had miscarried, we both jumped the besom, and thus we were married. End of section 3. Section 4 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. The Baker's Wife. An estimable woman is the baker's wife, and her lucky mate knows all about it. And when you are aware of her qualities rare, you will have little reason to doubt it. She is one of those wives who devote their whole lives to the weighty affairs of the trade. But though ever in the dust, she most positively must have an eye to the ways of the maid. A profitable woman is the baker's wife, though she may be a bit of a slave, and grudges not her trouble to make her profits double, thus affording opportunity to save. She sacrifices leisure, that she may be a treasure, to the man she has sworn to obey, while the baker loves his wife even dearer than his life, and a mighty happy couple are they. A very busy woman is the baker's wife, but the business she minds is her own, for she finds enough to do, her own duties to get through, so she leaves other people's alone. She cares not for the news, but she minds her P's and Q's, and her bakings, lest any should burn. So by constant circumspection she brings all things to perfection, for her ovens are all done to a turn. A very civil woman is the baker's wife, at least so her customers say, but contrives like her mother in one way or another to make her civility pay. She's a pocket for the blunt and another for a front, both fastened to the front of her gown. Though her person may be dusty, yet her temper's never crusty, seeing no one ever yet did her brown. A very knowing woman is the baker's wife, which no one is disposed to deny, always down upon such fellows as the mealy-muzzard millers, who adulterate the flour on the sly. She never feels dismayed by the dodges of the trade, which are all carried on at the mill, for she'll tell you in a minute each impurity that's in it, which she always can detect by the smell. A plain-spoken woman is the baker's wife, which the crafty miller knows very well, and the pettifogging fellow hangs his head like a willow when he calls in his seconds to sell. If the former wasn't good, it is quickly understood when she loosens the string of her clack, then flings down the cash with a thundering crash, and immediately gives him the sack. A very clever woman is the baker's wife, as anyone may easily see, for when she goes to bake she is always wide awake, to the benefits of LSD. You cannot find her match in making up a batch, nor her equal in kneading the dough, for she'll make a sack of flour in 1/4 of an hour, to a sack and 3/4 to grow. An admirable woman is the baker's wife, and a mixture of goodness and grace, always managing with ease the most difficult to please, but the blandest of smiles on her face. She is naturally kind, to civility inclined, and attentive to all it is said. So while the bread is baking, a fortune she is making, by good breeding as well as good bread. A very handy woman is the baker's wife, as any in a day you may meet. She is willing to wait on the small and the great, but is too much upon her poor feet. She goes the whole length of her physical strength, and ne'er to her duty says nay. From such heavy wear and tear 'twould be better to forbear, lest her head become rapidly grey. A model of a woman is the baker's wife, from her head to the soles of her feet, and if I'm not mistaken, I have now her portrait taken, as handsomely as carte de visite. And when the undertaker shall take her from the baker, we think it would be money well spent, a monument to raise as a tribute to her praise, made of alum and plaster cement. End of section 4. Section 5 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. Saucy Paul, or a Friend in Need. In Winchester City some few years ago, there lived a cordwainer in Whitleather Row. His figure was lean, his visage forlorn, his hair long and straight, and but seldom was shorn. Small were his earnings, and coarse was his fare. Few were his comforts, but heavy his care, for cold pinching poverty fell to his share. But though much neglected and needy as any, a worthy cordwainer was honest Joe Finney. A widower he, whose poor suffering wife some few months before had departed this life, and left a large family deep in distress, the widower's home and his future to bless. At times he felt lonely and ready to sink, by troubles reduced to despondency's brink. But when at his work he sat cheerless and sad, the pranks of his parrot could make his heart glad. But as trouble increased, I am bound to confess that his custom and credit grew rapidly less. And poor honest Joe, to his heart's discontent, was near £20 behind in his rent. Now his landlord, a miserly sordid old wretch, as ever was swung in the noose of Jack Ketch, a notice had sent that he surely next day a broker and bailiff would bring to survey his goods and his chattels above and below, determined they under the hammer should go. And if by this process he made not his rent, his penniless victim to jail should be sent. Next morning a gentleman passing that way stepped into his workshop and bid him good day. "My good man, what's the matter?" "Oh, nothing," said he. "But there is, let a stranger your confidant be." "Well, since you're so pressing, the truth shall be told. This day I'm expecting my goods to be sold, and now that my landlord no longer can wait, I've naught else to do but submit to my fate. I have tried, heaven knows, as long as I could, the torrent to stem of adversity's flood. But strong is my faith, though to jail they may take me, that Providence will not entirely forsake me. My trust is in Him who this trouble has given, in mercy to humble and fit me for heaven." "Why, man, how you tremble! Is no help at hand? Is none to be found in the length of the land?" "Yes, 'tis not far distant, for here are 3 chaps who will speedily help me off with my traps." Then landlord and broker and bailiff appeared, the latter adorned with a whitey brown beard. The landlord first entered and sat himself down, while on his brow lurked an unmerciful frown. Then in came the broker and bailiff as well, prepared in a jiffy Joe's chattels to sell. Now honest Joe's parrot was cunning and sly, could talk like a Christian, could laugh too, and cry, could bark like a dog, and could mew like a cat, and imitate Joe's well-known rat-a-tat-tat. Then Paul had a memory worthy of note, and numerous phrases had got off by rote. Yes, and many a fragment of song, old and new, she could sing, and what's more, she could whistle them too. But Paul's was a character not without stain, for her language of late was rather profane. And though Joe had schooled her with every care, some mischievous urchins had taught her to swear. And this often happened when Joe was at prayer, when p'raps she would ask him his Polly to kiss, or raise a fierce howl like a dog in distress, or imitate closely the vendor of rolls, thus quite disconcerting the mender of souls, and filling his mind with conflicting emotions, distracted his thoughts and disturbed his devotions. So the landlord began in a tone that was gruff, "For my rent, as you know, I have stayed long enough. I'm a man of few words, and of this you're aware. Could you pay me my rent? For I've no time to spare." Now Paul all the morning looked thoughtful and sage, and up to that moment sat still in her cage. But on hearing of time, she at once set to mock, crying, "Stay, time, stay! What's o'clock? What's o'clock?" "No means," answered Finny, "have I at command to stay these proceedings or meet your demand. The sum is too large for a poor man to borrow." "Too late, Mr. Ferguson. Call again tomorrow," cried Paul in a voice that was piercingly shrill. "Call again tomorrow, sir. I'll pay the bill." Then hopping round her cage, cried, "Leave it all to me. I know where the money is, and I keep the key." The landlord, astonished, cried, "Well, on my word! Why, Finny, this is an intelligent bird." For her pertinent speeches remove every doubt that the creature knows well what we're talking about. "Nevertheless, Mr. Broker, we must not forget that my tenant is near £20 in my debt. Make a list out at once of whate'er you may find, up above or below, or before or behind." Then the broker began with one 3-legged stool, when Polly exclaimed, "You're a fool! You're a fool!" and repeated the insult again and again, until greatly enraged the man threw down his pen, and vowed if once more to that tune she did sing, the very next moment her neck he would wring. And now, though with rage and vexation he fumed, he took up his pen and his duty resumed. 1 table, 6 chairs, all polished and grand, a set of fire irons, a fender and stand, 2 dishes, 6 plates, a lot of teacups and bowls, with 6 upper leathers and 3 pairs of soles, 1 workbench, a lapstone, 2 hammers, 3 awls, a rail upon which to hang bonnets and shawls, with sundry oddments too many to mention, and which to distinguish 'tis not my intention. Well now, Mr. Broker, ere proceeding to go up above, let us see. Are we all right below? Not exactly, for one thing I'd nearly forgot, and that of all others, the sauciest lot. I allude to the parrot, so artful and sly." "Oh, no, we never mention her," said Paul in reply. "Stop, stop," said the landlord. "Kind sir, if you please, I see how to settle this business with ease. I'll quash all proceedings at once on my word, if to me you'll dispose of this wonderful bird, and will give you receipt for your rent, my good man, if this bird you will place in my chandradan. For my daughter Augusta has worried me long to look out for a bird that could sing a good song. And as to the figure, that does not matter, so long as the vixen can prate well and chatter." Joe paused to reflect, for he loved little Poll, and played with her just like a child with a doll. "Not enough? Then I'll give you £5 in addition, which sum I believe will improve your condition." Joe gave his consent to this generous offer, which paid all his rent and replenished his coffer. So now in the chandradan Polly was placed, in charge of a flunkey in livery dressed. When Paul, from regard to the poor fellow's bones, cried, "John, drive carefully over the stones." "Well, John, how's your mother, so lusty and stout? You look mighty smart. Does the dame know you are out?" John turned very pale then, as red as a carrot, yet made no reply to the voluble parrot, but grinned, it is said, like a Lancashire cat, then shrunk into nothing behind his cravat. And now let us leave these companions together, returning to Finny, who purchased some leather, and with the £5 a foundation was laid for an always increasing and flourishing trade. The very next morn Joe was up with the sun, and before break of day much work had he done. No sooner was breakfast that morning dispatched than the stranger appeared, who was greatly attached to the honest cordwainer, and brought him good news, for he called in to order a new pair of shoes, but had not been present much more than a minute, when Finny exclaimed, "Oh, the dickens is in it! My good fortune I must not too highly extol, for lo, here comes my landlord, his flunkey, and Paul." "Here, Joe," said his landlord, "be so good, if you please, from this bird of ill omen to give me release, and I shall deserve a jolly good flogging, if e'er I afford her another night's lodging. For all the night long the vixen's been larking, and mewing, and shrieking, and screaming, and barking, till not one wink of sleep could we get all the night, and my wife's had a fit of hysterics outright. And my home, once so famed for its peace and its quiet, was changed to a scene of confusion and riot. But when daylight appeared, not one word would she speak, but indulged in a noise twixt a howl and a squeak. Here, take your bird back, for I'll have her no more. I'll assure you I've found her a regular bore." Now Paul, when replaced in her favourite nook, regarded the scene with a satisfied look, and soon commenced singing, "Home, sweet home, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home." "Where you may remain," said the landlord, quite vexed, who by this adventure was sorely perplexed, and looked like a martyr that suffered much wrong, on hearing that Paul had again found her tongue. And now, as he rudely threw open the door, Paul gave him a look of defiance once more, and the mischievous bird, like an ill-natured thing, then settled his hash by a finishing fling, which drove the said flunkey exceedingly wild, and as to his master he cried like a child, when Paul, like a cruel and mischievous elf, cried, "Go to the devil and shake yourself." So they took to their timbers and made themselves scarce, and the curtain now falls on this comical farce, for the landlord soon after forgot his vexation, and rallied ere long from his mortification. And though for a time he with anguish was riven, time wore it away, and poor Paul was forgiven, and he frankly confessed, though he cared not a cent, that the parrot had diddled him out of his rent. End of section 5. Section 6 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. Trentham Day, or Matrimonial Squabble and Its Consequences. John. Trentham Day, day of fashion and display. Though the sky looked dark and lowery, though it threatened to be showery, many a heart so light and gay will gladly greet the Trentham day. Joan. Trentham Day, sure to rain, the sages say. That which is their constant theme cannot be an idle dream. Their predictions may come true. Whether wise man, what say you? John. Trentham Day, heed not what such croakers say. Should their prophecies be true, never mind a shower or two. Pleasure seekers far or near meet at Trentham once a year. Joan. Trentham Day, John, you never can say nay. If it rained both cats and dogs, and you had to go in clogs, if 'twere ankle deep in mud, go you must and go you would. John. Trentham Day, I'll enjoy thee while I may. With the gayest take my chance in the merry rustic dance. Come, my darling, come along, join with me the happy throng. Joan. Trentham Day, my advice is keep away. I'll not go, depend on it, for 'twould spoil my wedding bonnet, and before the sun is setting, all will get a thorough wetting. John. Trentham Day, just what hippish people say. When the weather's close and warm, it denotes a thunderstorm. Should a cloud obscure the sky, tempest surely must be nigh. Joan. Trentham Day, wager you and I will lay, that before you're halfway there, it will be no longer fair. And this I say apart from joking, you'll get what you deserve, a soaking. John. Trentham Day, I am off without delay. If you will not with me join, it will be no fault of mine. Having no desire to roam, stay you quietly at home. Joan. Trentham Day, since it must be, go thy way. As you seem on pleasure bent, take it to your heart's content. But remember at your leisure, pains are close allied with pleasure. John starts. Trentham Day, John is singing all the way. Though the sky doth lower o'er me, joys in plenty are before me. Only let me reach the park, there I'll trip it until dark. Joan alone. Trentham Day, how can I be blithe or gay, left alone to fret and pine, and in solitude to dine? And the rain has come at last, ever pouring thick and fast. Trentham Day, now the rain will spoil their play. How it rattles, helter-skelter. John, I trust, is under shelter. What a day for clogs and pattens! Won't it spoil thin silks and satins? Trentham Day, night is come and John away. Heavy hang the weary hours, still the rain in torrents pours. His bark, I trust, is under way, fast sailing from the Trentham Day. John's return. Trentham Day, John as wet as potter's clay, staggers through the open door, prostrate falls upon the floor, while in tears his doting wife watches for returning life. Trentham Day, cold as marble, white or grey, wet without and wet within, first with rain and then with gin. Quite unconscious there he lay, like a helpless lump of clay. Trentham Day, filled with grief and wild dismay, bending o'er him by his side, see we still his loving bride, fairy sentry of the night, longing for the morning light. John revives. Trentham Day, like a phantom glides away. Night of bitter morning past, joy with morning came at last, when he raised his aching head, gently kissed his Joan, and said, Trentham Day, listen what I have to say. Since I left yon giddy scene, to some unearthly clime I've been, felt the freezing chilling breath, and the icy hand of death. Trentham Day, thou hast led me quite astray, caused me to exchange the quiet of my home for scenes of riot, and to slight my faithful wife, guardian angel of my life. Trentham Day, oft I've yielded to thy sway, many an hour with thee have passed, none so childish as the last. Hence my life with folly blended shall in future be amended. Joan. Trentham Day, be as reckless as you may. 'Tis a comfort I must own, you have suffered not alone. Scores of victims, people say, now regret the Trentham Day. End of section 6. Section 7 of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme by Charles Harwood Greene. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Krista Zaleski. The World. This world's a world of perfect laws, and never evinces any flaws of architect divine. Laws which unworthy man befriend, that skill of man can ne'er amend. The means adapted to the end, as plummet to the line. This world's a world of mighty force, which springs from an almighty source, eternal and above. Force which displays his power and skill, implicitly obeys his will, and acting in subservience still, proclaims his wondrous love. This world is one of many spheres, revolving with their atmospheres, whose numbers none can trace. For though the earth so large appear, to philosophic minds 'tis clear, much larger ones beyond compare exist in mighty space. This busy planet travels on in endless journey round the sun, philosophers attest. And while we take refreshing sleep, while pleasant dreams around us creep, while watchful mourners lowly weep, no moment knows of rest. While some allow all fears to slumber, and some with needless cares encumber the interests of the soul, while some a future heaven are winning, and numbers hell by constant sinning, unconsciously this orb is spinning around its central pole. This world's a world of many minds, as fitful as the changing winds that move the towering fane. Some like the zephyr's gentle balm, some like the south wind mild and warm, or rough as ocean's howling storm, or frightful hurricane. This world's a world of empty sounds, proved by the many ups and downs of life's uncertain stage. In youth 'tis known by pleasant dreams, in manhood by its plans and schemes, by disappointment's furrowed seams, in hoary-headed age. And 'tis a world of many woes, which every human being knows, who's mingled with its strife, a world of deep corroding care, which to their sorrow all declare, has fallen greatly to their share in this their checkered life. This world's a Christian one 'tis said, and Christ its universal head, yet still do heathen rage, while pulpits ring with roar and rant, and men with hypocritic cant, whose hearts are hard as adamant, disgrace this Christian age. This Christian world has many creeds, which carped and garbled as each needs, create no little spite. Some tread upon each other's toes, so slight the shade, and some as foes do stand aloof, while each one knows that he, at least, is right. Oh, would it not be wiser then, and more becoming Christian men, to bid these cavils cease? For 'tis the gospel's certain sound, which bids the heart with hope abound, irradiating all around with harmony and peace. This world some men with upturned eyes affect most meekly to despise, though valued as a gem. It is a world in mercy given for mortals to prepare for heaven. Thus to denounce it men are driven, when it despises them. This world's a world where solid worth is sometimes found with noble birth, most graciously combined. And when engrafted on this stem, 'tis radiant as the sparkling gem that decorates the diadem with royalty entwined. And 'tis a world that people love, who are with fashion hand in glove, and partial to display. Such occupation doth imply they have no aims beyond the sky, so, like the gaudy butterfly, they flutter life away. In modern beaux we seldom find much sterling sense with grace combined, so pleasing to the fair, and modern belles are seldom seen distinguished by their modest mien, but by the enormous crinoline they're privileged to wear. 'Tis just the world to suit the rake, who loves his burning thirst to slake at alcoholic spring. But oh, what words can ever tell the number of these souls that dwell amid the scorching flames of hell, the victims of its sting. A vice so hateful in mankind must enervate the human mind, and dwarf the soul divine. With mind and soul alike debased, the system shares the general waste, Hence to this evil hath been traced man's physical decline. This is a world where virtue sold, or bartered for its worth in gold, when rotten at the core, we think such virtue very frail, and must be growing rather stale, ere she consent to any sale, however bright the ore. It is as plain as ABC, that 'tis a world of LSD, most greedy after pelf. No matter how men may profess their friends to serve, we must confess, though words may not his acts express, each tries to serve himself. But though this world abound in crime, in mercy all have ample time, past errors to retrieve. And though its faults were magnified, and all its evils multiplied, experience oft has testified, 'tis one few wish to leave. End of section 7. End of Random Readings in Racy Rhyme, a repast for the recluse, a refreshment for the railway reader, by Charles Harwood Greene.